Hello, happy Friday, happy 00 degrees of Saturn and Neptune day, which is supposed to be a very life-shifting day. I'm feeling it. This week has been wild. I've been sick. I feel like I've been rewired from the inside out. I've been purging, um, but I'm here and I have a fun message, deeper message that I want to share with you today. If you're new to me, my name is Donnell Davis. I'm a channel healer and transformational mentor that specializes in future self embodiment, which is all about healing forward to become your future self now. I just got out of a session and I thought about this term that I use a lot in my sessions, and it's called your love story from your childhood. And the reason I talk about the love story from your childhood, because it is tied into the invisible wounds that you carry that no one sees, not even you sometimes. It's quietly shaping your relationships, your money, your confidence, how you see yourself, your body. It's really big work to recognize and be aware of how this invisible wound shapes your life until it doesn't. And it's really important to define the invisible wound. You might think that the invisible wound is your trauma, whatever happened to you as a child. It's not necessarily your trauma, it's the meaning you assign to whatever happened to you. It's the story, it's the interpretation of who you became and how you reacted to life after that trauma. And it impacts you because it changes your perception of the world. And I like to think of the wound as scaffolding, the energetic architecture that you built yourself and your life from. And so it could be really insidious because if you have an invisible wound that you are not aware of, it is running your life in some way. And an example, for instance, so I was just talking to a client that had a narcissistic father. And because he had a narcissistic father and a passive mom, he had a lot of trauma. There's a lot of abuse. So you can imagine, I want you to think about your own childhood story, but you can imagine this guy wasn't able to be himself. There was no room for authenticity in order for him to belong, he had to acclimate to that environment and the eggshells that he would have to walk on, right? So his love story was like, it's not safe for me to be myself. I need to be what they want me to be. I want to be loved. And so I will put up with this abuse. I will do whatever I can to make this work to survive. And for him, it looked like people pleasing, very porous boundaries. So it can be different for each person, right? Because we're all so unique. But it creates this wound of not feeling enough, not feeling worthy, feeling like maybe you're alone. Maybe love doesn't feel safe. Like, how could love feel safe when you had a really challenging upbringing? And I know the women I work with, this is one of the things that I identify in my coaching or when I'm doing a deep channeling session with them. Because if we don't identify this invisible wound and bring light to the wound to amplify it and to see what it is, then it's really challenging to change your story in your life. Because that scaffolding, right, the energetic architecture that I'm mentioning, is the way you build your life. It is the perception. And if you meet two different people, if you were at a party and you met one person that is, let's say, had a really healthy upbringing, they were able to be themselves, they didn't have to mute their voice or anything like that. They're going to behave one way, right? Like you're going to feel them. They're going to come in and you're going to feel them confident in their skin. And then if you met another person, like for instance, someone I just mentioned, the people pleaser who had to morph, they're going to show up differently in life. They may be just as charming and just as wonderful, but there's a part of them that doesn't believe that they deserve to have love just based on who they are because they never got to be that person. So they may overgive. They may be the love bomber. They may be so nice in a conversation. It's going to show up in a multitude of different ways. But the point being, it's very different energy. And oftentimes you can't even like know which one is which, right? Except one person feels really comfortable in their skin and one is acting as if they are comfortable. And I know who you want to be, right? You want to be comfortable in your skin. You don't want to operate from these like shadowy, invisible wounds. I know I suffer. Believe it or not, I know one of my deepest wounds is low self-esteem. I had to morph and be someone and be mutable and flexible in my childhood in order to feel loved. And I had a loving mom and dad and all the things, but like there's a story, right? And so we all have the stories. But here's the thing, we can't continue to operate from that. We can't continue to blame and be like, okay, because of my parents, this is who I am, and I'm never going to be healthy or happy. You can't suppress it, right? Because if you suppress it, it's going to leak out and seep into all your world. So if you find yourself trying to up level in certain ways in your life with your money or your relationship, and you're like, why am I stuck? Why am I stuck? And if you decide, like I made a decision at the beginning of this year, I was like, I'm going to up how much money I make. I'm going to increase it. And I made a really fun goal for myself. And I can promise you this very week, every challenge to the way I have to think to expand has been brought up to my awareness. My invisible wound has come up to be seen. And I've had to sit in the sobering information of how it's running my life, even though I didn't realize it still is there, because there's different layers and levels to all of this, right? And once I saw I couldn't unsee it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making decisions from the wound, not from my high heart. There's a very big difference, you guys. If you make decisions based on love and feeling good about something, or if you're making decisions based on the invisible wound. So the issue with the wound is that wound becomes identity. It becomes the identity that you operate from, because I said it's the energetic architecture. Then the identity becomes the personality, right? Because we're operating, we're like, we think this is who we are. We think, oh, I'm this person and this is how I behave. And then if you let the personality, so the identity becomes the personality, then if you let the personality keep going, you're going to allow it to become, if it's unexamined, your destiny. Because it's determining how you show up in your life. So if you want to know what your future is going to be, you can understand it very clearly from the personality you're operating as. And if you want something different in your life, if you want to become the woman who has the very things that you're asking for, you have to become a different personality. You have to be willing to shed the identity that is holding you hostage. Many women don't become who they're truly meant to be. They become who they needed to be in order to survive. It's a tough truth. And I don't know why life has been so interesting in this way for me this week, but it has been showing up for me so clear. It's like as if somebody just poured a bucket of cold water in my face this week. I don't know if it's the astrology with the eclipse. I could blame it on a multitude of things. I just know that the universe has conspired for me to see where I'm playing small this week and to invite me into a bigger game, but I need to be willing to retire the wound. Are you willing to retire the wound? Are you willing to become a different person in order for you to shift and to evolve? And I want to kind of share with you how these invisible wounds can show up. Because if it shows up with money, for instance, you may be overworking, undercharging. You might have a fear of visibility. You have inconsistent income, and you may go into a freeze response. So if something doesn't work out for you, if your love story is tied into, with your invisible wound, I can even use myself as an example. If I'm operating sometimes from a low self-worth wound, and I have to go show up in the world and do these videos and talk about all these things, I'm human. It can impact me, it can affect me, but I decided that I'm not going to let that be my destiny, right? So I'm here. That's why I'm talking about this. I'm being very vulnerable this week about what's been happening in my own reality. But I see it. I've done thousands and thousands of readings with women and men, and I have seen this. I talk about it all the time in my sessions, the invisible wound, because I want to name it, get it out there, and move it for people. I know for me, the moment I operate from my wound, especially like with money and business, right? It's like my frequency drops. Something shifts. I'm not as magnetic. It's frustrating. But the course correction is coming back to my heart and being like, okay, why am I doing this? What would it look like if I felt worthy to charge what I want to charge or do, show up in the ways that I want to show up? What is the next level of that? Okay, so those are some of the questions I want you to think about in whatever area you're experiencing this. So it can show up in relationships, this wound. And you can have attraction to unavailable partners. You might be overgiving. You could be the people pleaser in the relationship. You might be walking on eggshells. You might be avoidant. You might be hyper independent. When I tell you I've had a doozy of a week, I realized I was being a little avoidant. I've never thought of myself as avoidant in my relationship. I'm so open. I'm a very open communicator. I'm very vulnerable in the way I share. But I found in the areas that I'm uncomfortable, I was avoiding talking about a topic that made me feel like I wasn't enough, my invisible wound. And when it was brought to my awareness, I was like, oh my God, like I didn't even know I was doing that. So I'm sharing that. I'm being so real with you because we don't know how it shows up. And that's why it's so supportive to have a mentor like myself that's a channel and can see patterns very quickly. I met with a woman just before this video, and I don't know her from anything. And I was able to identify her pattern, her boyfriend's pattern, all this stuff very quickly because it's the way my channel works. But whoever you work with, like this is something to look at, to understand, because if you're stuck, you want to move through this. So if it shows up in your health, it could look like burnout, autoimmune patterns for us women. It's your body holding stress, right? It could look like nervous system dysregulation. Unfortunately, I know about this one too because I'm trying to work on healing my Hashimoto's. My stress patterns deeply affect my body. I've been knocked out, if you will, from dysregulation at different times in my life. And I think going back to my own invisible wound, realizing the ways that my health is trying to alarm me and make me aware of where I'm operating from faulty foundations. And so is your health too. And I believe our body is always, the symptoms are so important, right? So your invisible wound is not your weakness. It is the doorway to your deepest medicine in your life. Your deepest, deepest, deepest medicine. Trust me when I say that. When you shift this and when you can sit with it and hold it and digest it, it changes your life because you shift your consciousness internally and you start to operate in new ways. You become a new person. I love to work with this invisible when I'm doing constellation work, with the future self work, with identity activation, with grief integration, with nervous system safety. It affects all these different ways that I show up with my clients. So we're not removing the wound, you guys. This isn't like psychic surgery where we're going in and going, okay, I'm going to remove that wound. You transform your relationship to it. So when you transform your relationship to it, something inside of you softens. There's a level of deeper acceptance. There's an ability to observe and be with yourself in new ways. I want to mention, if you right now are in a stuck place or you're wanting to get to your next level, I created an amazing identity activation meditation that you can download. I'll put the details in the notes on this video. It is absolutely incredible. It'll be such a great place to start with this work. So get your copy of it. It'll be immediately sent to you. But just some things I want you to reflect on that can help you with this. Because if we never got to work together, if we never do, I hope that you do get in my world. I have so many different ways and avenues that you can work with me. But something to think about is, what story did you make about yourself as a child? What story did you make, about yourself? What's your love story with how you related to your parents? Did you have to overcompensate in any ways? Your present day will tell you a lot as to where you feel the most triggered in your life. Where you are deeply triggered is such a way to show you your history. Because a lot of times the triggers that we're experiencing now, you think it's about the present moment, but it's ancient. It goes so much deeper and it's connected to that invisible wound. And I want you to think to yourself, like, what are you protecting? What are you protecting? I know for me, I'm protecting, with my wounding, I was protecting the little girl that doesn't feel like she's enough. Because my dad left when I was 3. He chose to go be with a different family for a little bit. That all worked itself out. But like there were so many little things that this 3-year-old decided about myself and my life. And it's unconscious, you guys. If it was conscious and in your face, like it would be obvious, you would understand all this, you would know all this. So don't feel like if you don't know the answers to these questions, that something's wrong with you, because this is deep work, right? This is work that like once we uncover, we can't unsee it. And then it frees us and liberates us in so many different ways because you get to decide the new energetic architecture. If this resonates, and you want to go deeper, definitely join my email list. Like by getting that activation, you can learn more. If you want to get a 30-minute session with me, a consultation, it's not a session, it's a consultation to learn more about my services, don't hesitate to reach out to me. But I really want you to understand that there is a divine perfection, an infinite intelligence to this life. And if you trust the ways that it unfolds, like I know, trust me, like this week has been one of the hardest weeks I've had in years. I'm just being totally real with you. I have cried this week. I have felt a dissolution of my own identity. I have Aries in the first house with Chiron and Mars. Like, if you know anything about astrology, it was Saturn and Neptune there. I'm just going, what is happening? And I don't let astrology rule my life. And I know that everything is happening for me, not to me. And I trust that when I ask, just like you, for something in your life, like you claim, you say, I want to have reach this next level of income. I want to have better this or that, health, relationships, everything that is standing in the way of your greatness will be brought to your attention and your awareness so that you can shift it, so you can choose differently. And that invisible wound will light the fuck up. Okay. I'm just being real with you. And that's why it's so important to have people that can support you during these times. Like I have people that support me. And when you see that, that is when you are the closest you've ever been. I know that sounds really weird because you think when everything's working out, you're the closest you've ever been to getting what you want. It's not always, that's not the truth. It's when you're surrendered. It's when you don't always have the answers or know what exactly is happening that you are malleable. And if you can surrender and lean into that, that's when the miracles happen. That's when things change because you're not holding on and gripping to the identity, to the personality that you've had. You have to make space for the new. And I really believe for a lot of us, this week has done exactly that. It's saying, hey, this isn't going to work where you're going. So you need to release this. You need to let this go. And Pisces season is about that. So trust Pisces season. You might be listening to this at a different time, but right now, for in real time, we're in Pisces. It's letting go. It's seeing those subconscious patterns and ways that you're showing up that aren't serving you. Trust the medicine, trust the intelligence of the universe. Definitely reach out and definitely download that identity activation because it will help shift you and move you in the right direction immediately. I hope you have a great day. Take care.